Hi everyone again, and welcome to the iSpring webinar series, where every week we talk about e-learning trends, share iSpring tips and tricks, and cover client cases. I'm Valerie, an account executive at iSpring, and I will be the moderator of today's session. And today we are going to have an interview with an expert from one of the Asia-Pacific institutions. So we've invited David Chin to talk to us today. Hi, David. How are you doing today?
Hi, Valerie. I'm doing fine. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this webinar. Hope I can share some things that will be of help to you all.
Yeah, thank you, David. So can you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Okay, so I'm a principal lecturer at an institution in Singapore called Republic Polytechnic. And I kind of hit a lot of the e-learning development. And how did I get into this? Well, many years ago, not that many actually. Time does fly, right? I think it was 5 years ago. A colleague of mine couldn't make it for a meeting for that every school had to send one person for an e-learning to represent the school for an e-learning development meeting. And because my colleague couldn't make it, I went over, and this time I knew that we were going on e-learning, and that was way before any of this COVID thing happened, right? So, and that was history, because from then on, I just started to really get fully into this e-learning development. And the first tool we used was actually happened to be iSpring.
Oh, seems like we lost David for. Okay, let David to reconnect. Hope everything will be okay. Okay, so while David is trying to reconnect, I also would like to mention that you are more than welcome to submit your questions in the chat. So yeah, please. Let me see. Sorry a little bit for this hiccup, guys. Sometimes it happens. Okay. Let me see. We have a technical issue. Hope you can give us a couple of minutes. Okay, I see that David is trying to reconnect. Let me see. Okay.
I'm sorry, when did I go offline?
Oh, so you talked about that back then. So you just replaced one of your colleagues, as far as I understand.
Yeah. So that was my first meeting, and then that was history, and I've been kind of heading up a lot of the e-learning development ever since. I was saying that we do so much more e-learning now, and it's really like more than double or tripled since the pandemic started. But it's really great that we already had that foundation of at least one strong tool. We do use more than an iSpring now, but iSpring is still our base tool that most of our staff have been trained in so far. Before I got cut off, also I mentioned I've been here about 10 years, and I focus a lot on e-learning development for the school, as well as artificial intelligence, and I also do a lot in the sport development. So the domain specific diploma that I take is in sports.
Oh, really? That's
Yeah.
interesting. That's so interesting. So you just have like two types of education, you know,
Yep.
in
Yep.
sports.
So on one
Yeah.
hand, I'm teaching the sport specific.
Mhm.
On the other side, I'm helping to coach a lot of staff in e-learning development, and also taking care of actually a new diploma for adults that we have now, which is teaching them how to be coaches and mentors in their workplaces, which entails a lot of e-learning because of what we're all going through now, right? So how do they train their staff in workplace skills, actually using e-learning as one of the avenues. So that's something which we are very actively doing now.
I see. Okay, that's great here. So, can you tell us a little bit more about how did you handle the training process before iSpring? Like, what challenges did you have?
Okay, so good question. Before iSpring, we didn't really do any e-learning per se, right? But I think when we started to know that we needed to do a digital transformation, the first thing that, I mean, before that, it was maybe videos, if I can recall. Just we did a lot of talking heads, right? And it was more as a backup, number one, and number two, it was like when we did night classes, we would video ourselves, because if the adult learners couldn't make it after work, they would be able to catch up and see the video thereafter. But we only did it for the adult learners who took the night classes, and that was what our e-learning kind of looked like, right? So if you missed my class, you could kind of see the video of me and the slides beside me, and it was this huge proprietary system that nobody knew how it worked, and it was pretty complicated to have to edit every video after that. So that was basically our e-learning. And when we started, I think I remember one of the questions that were asked was why, when we did our first school kind of project for e-learning, somebody asked, and again, I didn't make the decision, somebody asked, why iSpring, iSpring Suite? And the response was that it would be the lowest learning curve, because we all use PowerPoints. Every lesson is done on PowerPoint. And therefore, at that point in time, iSpring became something which was easy for everyone to pick up and just start easy conversion, so to speak, right? So if I needed to put a lesson online, I already had a slide deck, and that would help. So our first trainings, after iSpring, we did actually face a challenge, because we didn't, not many people knew how to use it. So we got vendors in to kind of train us in the use of iSpring Suite. And they went through all the features, which was a lot. And they went through a lot of how do you link this with your local learning management system, which involves a lot of complicated steps and coding and deep linking and stuff like that, right? And most people, me included, that left those training sessions were a bit lost. So I must say, what really worked for us to overcome that challenge was when we decided, okay, let's just learn it on our own. That's what we did. So I picked a lesson. I said, okay, let's see. And I went in there and watched a lot of iSpring videos. I was telling Valerie just now that I also kind of used iSpring help desk a lot, and they were fantastic. When they say that they get back to you in an hour, within the day or a few hours, they really do. And best of all, it was live. So if I had a problem, I could have a live chat with a technical support that would tell me how to get certain things done. And in the beginning, I relied a lot on that because there are many things that we had no idea how to do, and it wasn't really in the videos back then. So what really worked was that after doing, getting through that first few courses, then creating our own training material. So I kind of helped create the first basic and advanced training materials for the institution, and it works a lot better because it's very specific. You know exactly what every lecturer needs to do, and all the steps needed to get to the end point, which is getting it onto the learning management system at the end, and all the settings that you need to be very specific about. And again, there's many things you can do, but with reference to a particular learning management system, whatever you might be using, there are certain tweaks that you needed to do back then. And when we focused in on specifics, the training became a lot smoother. So I must say now that the basic and advanced course that we do, we've even gone and put it online. So people have self-help documents that and e-learning that they can use, and that really helps, because even when sometimes our staff are in the course, but actually they're so busy trying to mark a lesson and stuff like that. And while we do have practical work, we always tell them, okay, look, I understand if you're really busy, but remember, there's always a self-help document which goes through step by step everything you need to do to get something on our systems. How do you do the voiceovers and the addition of a quiz, and everything is there. And recently, we also in the self-training materials, I also started to note that iSpring has some good video content, and I begin to start including that video content in our training. We don't do a lot of that because, again, sometimes the video content includes a lot more features than we use, but as and when we can find something useful, we actually put it on. So that's how we actually overcame the challenges, and as of now, I think more than half, I would say maybe 70% of our teaching staff and our part-time teaching staff, which is important because our teaching staff do lesson content, but if you're in an institution, you realize that the people with more time are those that are part-timers. And we have set aside a budget, and we actually set up kind of a budget to allow those part-time teaching staff to earn also by helping us develop lessons in their domain expertise. And that really helps, because as a full-timer, iSpring might be fast, but no e-learning development is really that fast. It looks really easy when you look at the videos, and when you first try, it's really easy to get started. But to get the level of perfection that you need in an e-learning to make everything flow nicely, and to make sure that the students are engaged and not lost, and every slide is linked. Because remember, you're not there in a pure asynchronous e-learning. You're not there. You really have to have that flow of ideas and etc. Right? And I'm using a deck of slides that I used to teach, and I'm there to fill in all the gaps. But in e-learning, again, there's no one there, and you have to make those links, and it takes a lot of time. We estimated way in the beginning that for every hour of e-learning, it takes us close to 50 hours of development time for a beginner. And if you really want to do an e-learning that is that you say, wow, this is something that people might pay money for, it takes about that long. And for someone like me, because I've done so much of e-learning, a lot of our staff are there now, quite advanced, I would say it still takes about 20 hours to get a good lesson out, right? And I mean, if you just consider one point, right, the voiceovers, for example, you know, it's just every single word has to be pronounced properly, and you have to change certain words because the automated system may pronounce something differently. To get through every slide, it's a lot of work, but I must say that it's fun. It's really fun doing it and having it work, and then having students and adults and young students like just going out there and and benefiting from the content and giving feedback after that wow, okay, this content was really beneficial. I like that it was self-paced. I like that it was interactive, and we're getting a lot better at it, right? In the beginning, what you might find out is that a lot of developers end up doing using a lot of the features that might be available in any development software. But at the end of the day, if you're not careful, the learner might just end up doing what we call click the next button.
Right.
So you're just clicking on next, and even some of the interactions might also be a different form of next, right? And we're learning how to get out of that next button type of interaction and really make them do branching and do certain levels of collaboration, etc.
Yeah.
So
I see. Right. So that's really important to make your courses interactive, engaging for learners, and a lot of time you spend on planning the e-learning process, your courses, etc. So you think about what would you like to say, what would you like to present to them.
Yes.
I totally agree. Yes. So iSpring just help you to organize it in this a convenient way for students so that they can view it right.
Yep,
I
exactly.
totally agree. And can you tell me, what do you think is unique about your institution and how you approach training?
Okay, what's unique about institution? You mentioned one word just now, which is very important, and that is the design, right? So again, when we first started, we didn't really think so much about the design. We were focusing more on the interactions that the technology and iSpring and other tools allow us to do. And people were really interested in learning how to use the technologies. How do I create a quiz? How do I create a drag and drop and all that? And we taught them, and we knew this from the beginning, but it's easier said than done when we say that the pedagogy must always come before the technology. And when we try to link both of them, they say, oh, let me teach you this, the Ganesh nine stages of e-learning, learning development, or the 5E framework. And before we get to the technical bits, and nobody really wanted to know about the pedagogy, because they felt that, oh, I already know all that, right? Because I've been teaching for many years. So just tell me how to use the technology. And invariably, when we taught people the technology, they went in there and created e-learning that was more of the next button type of interaction. Again, the interactions were there. And when we first started, any interaction was wonderful, right? It just looked fantastic, even if it was click the next button. But again, that was 5 years ago. We have gone way beyond that now, right? And our e-learning, if you go by levels, we try to hit a level 3 or level 4. I can't remember what that framework is. If anyone can remember it, it's a 4-level framework starting with M. It just slipped my mind. I know it so well, but and we try to get to a level 3. Level 4 being the AR, VR stuff, which we kind of try not to get too much into at this point, although we are dabbling a lot in it. So back to the design part, right? So the thing that we do differently now is that we really push the point that, look, if you haven't got the pedagogy right, then there's no real point worrying about the technology. Whatever you can imagine, we can figure a way of making it happen with the technology. So if you can imagine what you want to happen pedagogically within an e-learning lesson, I want to start with an exploration and inquiry. I want to get into a peer assessment type of development. I want there to be a chance for people to articulate their thinking, right? I want I want space for reflection, for example. And you think you want to have all those, and you plan it out in a design, and you say that, okay, but this design now, I want to do it online. And then we say, okay, then how would this look like online? Because you're not in a classroom, and if you're doing asynchronous, right, means no lecture involved, then what's that going to look like? And if they can kind of put it on a piece of paper, then we say, okay, that's a good start. Now we will tell you how to make it happen. And if we don't know how, we will go to the tech support, or we will find some way of doing an embed. So there's a very powerful function in iSpring Suite called embedding. And with embedding, we can insert interactive tools from all over the place, and whatever you can think of that has an interaction capability, we have included it into an iSpring learning package, and that's again what we do differently. So now we really push this concept of get the design first, and then we talk about how you're going to make that happen. So even in our self-paced e-learning that we have for iSpring, and for other development tools, we on the thing that we teach is pedagogy, right? This is how a good lesson looks like, and then we look at how technology can come in to support, and we don't, like, if you want to have collaboration happen, we say, okay, you can use any one of these 3 tools, right? It could be a palette, a mirror, or whatever, a Jamboard. You can use any of those, but we'll tell you that and that's what you need. So learn to set it up first, and then we teach you how to port it back into the system through an embed function.
Oh, I got you. I see.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that also other tools. So can you tell me what other authoring tools do you use?
Okay. What other authoring tools do we use? We use Articulate Rise. That's one of the other ones. Then there are other local technologies like a Nobi and Cosepad, etc. that we use. Not a lot, but here and there. But the one tool that we've been really interested in teaching was Articulate Rise, which is the other tool, and that's because it's not a slide format. It's a continuous learning format. It means it's like a new story that you can swipe up and down, and it kind of reviews things to you slowly. If you've used Adobe Spark, Spark, that's another tool that is a bit like a same format where you can develop content, but that one you can't do interactions. It's just content, right? There's no quizzes or anything. But I must say that the one tool in iSpring that has really helped at the same time is actually Space. So if you haven't tried Space, that's really one tool you definitely want to take a look at. It is very much a bit like Rise and Spark, in the sense that you can also develop a continuous scrolling type of e-learning where things appear and then they kind of, okay, they give you a pause and you can't see what's coming up next until you kind of finish what you're doing. And as you swipe up again, then the next piece gets revealed. So it controls kind of what you can see at any one time on the screen. And the best part about tools like that, which we like a continuous learning format kind of tool, and again, not a slide panel based, is that it really gives you the opportunity to do what I think the industry calls responsive e-learning content, which means that even if it's a tiny mobile phone screen or a huge big laptop screen at 17, 18 inches, whatever, the content will resize itself. Okay, so the fonts, everything will change in size. Now, if you're using an iSpring suite-based type of a tile thing, right, as in slide by slide, that kind of keeps it to that 16:9 or 3:5 format. So if you're doing it on a mobile phone, it only resizes kind of within that 3:5 16:9 format. And you can imagine how if it was a landscape slide and I put my phone in portrait, the slide will only be like that, right? And you couldn't see. But if you're using any of the Space or the iSpring Space or the Rise or the Spark tools, right, it actually resizes. So it's it's really responsive, and that's where I think the future of a lot of e-learning will go, because it's also a lot more natural to a young person. They're more used to swiping up and down on their mobile phones and their tablets and what have you, rather than clicking through slides, which reminds them of school, right? So that kind of works well as well.
Yeah, I totally agree. And so new generation is coming, and we also have to think about their learning as well. That's
exactly.
I totally agree with you. So let us also talk more about the e-learning process and what exactly what happens after you've created your e-learning course. So how do you deliver it to learners?
Okay, that's interesting. So we have several ways. If we have, oh gosh, we have more than one LMS system, right? We deal with our own internal ones, and then we have a Blackboard somewhere, and then we have a Brightspace coming up, and a couple of others. So the most important delivery method is what a lot of you would probably know is called SCORM, which is a SCORM, and that is a general format that it's like PDF, right? Once you turn it into PDF, everyone can read it. So once you turn it into SCORM, any learning management system can read it, and it will play exactly the way you designed to play most of the time, right? So that is the main process, and only through an LMS, a learning management system, like Blackboard or Moodle or whatever, can you actually track the e-learning, who has done it, who has in progress, who has 70% completion, and who has completed, and if they did a quiz, how many marks did they have, did they click through every slide, and that's kind of the thing that how we get it down to the student. Now we also use links, and we could only start doing this when iSpring Space came out. So there's learning content now that we develop and that we don't really want to track, because we want it to be freely available to any student as like a reference. And I don't necessarily need to put that up as a SCORM package on an LMS. So we publish it to iSpring Space, and we get the link. This link, as long as we share it, anyone in the world, that link can see it. And during the pandemic, we use a lot of Microsoft Teams. And in Microsoft Teams, which is not an LMS yet, but it can do a lot of LMS-like things. Again, we don't want to track, right? So what we do is that we simply click on the top and we include a link. And Microsoft MS Teams has tabs on top, TABs tabs. So we put the e-learning as a tab. So we tell the students, okay, if you need to do more of this particular topic, and it's a very important thing that you all just need to have at your fingertips all the time. If you need a reference, just click the tab, and then the whole e-learning will play within the Microsoft Teams window itself. So and again, that we can't track who does it. But that is another method of how we get the delivery of the e-learning content. The other ways that we've started doing is we also subscribe to iSpring Learn as another LMS, right? So iSpring has a iSpring Learn learning management system, and we did that because we wanted we had an industry partner that wanted us to run some courses, and they couldn't run those courses on our internal learning management system, which is very closed, right? It's very secure, only for students and no one else. So in order to run that project for one of our industry partners, we decided that to try iSpring Learn, and we've been using it ever since. So with iSpring Learn, which is another learning management system created by iSpring, we simply publish a course straight to iSpring. There isn't even a need to create a SCORM file, right? And whoever has signed up for the course and paid whatever they need to pay for that course, we simply onboard them onto the course, and they get an email saying there's a new course available to you. They go onto the iSpring platform. The first time they create an account, and after that they can just take courses off that platform. That's the second method. The last method that we use to deliver e-learning is through another iSpring product at this point called iSpring Marketplace or iSpring Market. And we only started using iSpring Market about July this year, because previously we had another platform that we used to give free courses. So we would create micro-learning, we would SCORM it like a 10-minute, 15-minute, half-an-hour course, and we would throw it up to this free platform, and anyone in the country could just click on it and say, oh, I want to learn something, and they could click on it and get it for free. And that's kind of our service to help any adult or any student learn more if they wanted to learn something, right? And in the middle of this year, that system went down, as in they closed it. And so we decided to give that we wanted another platform to continue our free courses, and so we subscribed to iSpring Market. And with iSpring Market, we were quickly able to port about 50 courses over in July, and now we have about 150 courses, very, very small courses. And that's, we call that micro learning courses, MLCs. And that's kind of one of the hottest areas internally, right? We're all trying to create more of these small courses, bite-sized, throwing it online. We also use it as part of our learning for students in the classroom. You say, okay, here's something, we can post it on MS Teams, you can put it anywhere, right? We can also post it on this free platform, but go and do it before you come for the class, and it's just 10 minutes, go take a look at it just to get some primer to the class. So we do a lot of that now, and this iSpring Market also allows us to turn on a charging mechanism. So currently there's one course we do on that platform that says that is a certification course. So if you want to fly a drone in Singapore, you need a license. If you come and fly a drone in Singapore without a license, you get arrested.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Above a certain size, I think 1.1 kg or something, right? So the small ones, not really. But in any case, if you flew a small drone next to an airport, you will still get arrested. So this course is, it gives you a license that says that you now know all the rules to flying a drone. And this was in collaboration with our aviation authorities. So we put that course up, and because we are an authorized training partner, because we have an aviation diploma, we put it up for the public, and so people can pay the $20 or very, very cheap. Go take the 2-hour course on iSpring Market. Anyone can do it. Get your license and go fly your drone. Any foreigner that comes to Singapore also, you're more than welcome to fly a drone, but please, when you land, go to our website, go search for the drone course and pay $20, get the course before you fly a drone so you don't get arrested. But that's, again, the last one. And while we have one paid course there, our main goal for iSpring Market and this FOC platform is as a way to put a lot of micro learning content out there so that people know that, okay, these are all the courses in which the Polytechnic does teaching in, right? And all these micro learning courses, if you want to know more, you can take a longer 1-day course, you can take a 2-day course, you can take a 2-year course, you can take a 2-year specialty diploma. It's just what we do, right? But if you don't want, there's still 150 courses out there and growing that you can go anytime you want and learn anything you want for free. And that's the idea. It's just as a public service and also as a way of kind of expanding our outreach efforts to anyone who wants to learn, right?
Yeah, and that's really great to hear, because if you just want to learn something, you can find this information, and I believe that your Polytechnic, you prepared these great courses that learners can get knowledge. They can get knowledge from there. Yeah, that sounds so great. And I also have a tricky question.
Sure.
So how can you determine that your online training is successful? So can you tell us about it a little bit?
Okay, that's a hard question, but actually a good question. We do a fair bit of, are we trying to get more into research, especially to do with e-learning, just to make sure that our approach is evidence-based. Now, we do put a lot of effort in making sure that we follow sound pedagogical principles in our e-learning. But at the end of the day, you're right? How do we know that the training is good, right? So one of the tools that is currently being used here and there as a research tool is called the TAM, or the Technology Acceptance Model. It's quite well established. So if you're doing research, that's one way to do it. We also kind of just create questionnaires and surveys to make sure that when the e-learning goes out, it at the end of the day, when we collect the data, it tells us that the e-learning is good. Now, that said, with our students who are full-time students, they don't have a choice, right? You have to do it. So that isn't a really good way of gauging whether it's successful or not. So I would say that at the end, the marketplace is really our main avenue where I would say if someone's willing to pay for a course, that means that it's good, right? If the other thing that is a major thing is not only payment for a course but completion. So we realized that in the old platform that I said we were giving free courses out, right? And it's not only us, right? It's a major problem across the industry. I think maybe 10-20% start on free courses and finish it, which means that a lot of people say, oh, it's free. They go in, they start it, but they don't finish it. I don't know. Is it because it's boring? It just didn't capture your attention? So many reasons, right?
Yeah, right.
And they don't finish it. So at the end of the day, I would say that training is successful if people weren't forced to do it, but took the course and finished it. And while we can do the technology acceptance survey and all these validated tools, right? The real success of your e-learning is when you have a critical mass of courses that people actually want to take either for free and complete it, or that they will pay a small sum of money to take it, right? And again, if people put the money down, it means that your course is really successful because people think that it is worth paying some money for. Yeah, so that's my creative.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think so as well. So if people they just view the course till the very end, then yeah, that's a good course. So
Yep.
we have a question from Sandy. I don't know if we can share it, but Sandy asked us to show
Sure.
one of the packages about its
I will I'll post a link up. And this is an interesting course. We did it for a third kind of a project again. And let me just find it. You can ask the next question while I just kind of pull it out.
Sure. So yeah, so we discussed today a lot of interesting things, e-learning process, how to use iSpring, and you also tell us how do you use this or that feature. It's really important to learn about. And let me see what else we have. So yeah, so basically you answered all of my questions today, and I'm so excited. Oh yeah, thank you, David, for sharing this link.
One. This is one of 17. Yeah, you can just click on it. This is iSpring Space, right? So we did it on iSpring Suite, but we published to iSpring Space to share internally. But this is one of 17 courses that we did, and it is open to 6,000 sport coaches in Singapore now. And again, no one's forcing them to take it, but they can click on and they can learn all there is to learn about teaching a young person sporting skills. And there's 17 lessons. This is just one of them, right? That we've done in iSpring Suite and published on iSpring Space. So Sandy, I hope that kind of answers your question.
Yeah. So,
hi Raman, I realized that there's one Singaporean here, right? Yes, Raman.
Yeah, so guys, please submit your questions because I don't have any questions left. But so that would be great if you could ask your questions, and David can tell you more. So, guys.
Yep. Can they do mics or only on typing?
I think only typing.
Okay, sure. Yeah. Then I'll just we can keep a look there.
Mm-hmm.
So Sandy and Raman, if you take a look at that course, that again is something that follows pedagogy first. So if you take a look at it, we have said, okay, when you first go into a course, you really want to encourage students to explore, right? So we started with Paul, And in this case, you've used a Mentimeter for the poll. So we have kind of embedded a Mentimeter into the starting of the course. And you also notice that at the end, we have put in a peer assessment, a peer feedback, right? Which is really, really important for learners, especially for asynchronous learning, because again, there's no lecturer, but in every single industry, there's people that can, anyone can learn a lot better just by critiquing someone else's work, or what do you call it, or giving feedback to someone, or teaching someone, right? So I'm sure you all heard that the moment you teach something as a learner, you learn a lot faster, because suddenly you have to organize all the everything in your head, and you really need to know, and it really crystallizes all the learning in your head when you need to teach someone, right? So I learned iSpring the best when I started teaching it. Because I had to know exactly how everything fits together and how to explain everything. And when I started putting the e-learning online, I even learned it more, because now people didn't have a chance to ask me questions, right? I had to be very clear the moment I put it in an online course. So that's even a higher level, right? So in this case, you'll notice that we use a Padlet. And so you're familiar with a Padlet. It's kind of a collaboration tool. And we said, okay, everybody, here's a small assignment for you, and you post it on Padlet. And then we say, okay, as part of your learning, please pick another participant and give a feedback comment. And in so doing, they kind of teach one another, even though I'm not really going into this e-learning all the time to give any kind of comment. But that again has really been something that we are changing the way we do our asynchronous e-learning, which means the e-learning that no one really monitors, because as we get back into a more, there is no new normal, there's a better normal. And the better normal is that while we do have face-to-face classes, a huge amount of content is going to be online, it's going to be blended, it's going to be everything else. Now, and when that happens, right, we realized that in the first year of the pandemic, people felt disconnected because they were doing e-learning. And yeah, Raman, I see a question about the next button, and they were clicking the next button, right? So they weren't talking to anyone except on maybe WhatsApp and stuff. So we decided that no, we can't let that happen, right? People have to feel a connection. So if you do if you go back to, for example, self-determination theory, which is a motivation theory, people must feel related and connected to a community. If not, they will not come back. They will not finish the course. And by doing that Mentimeter, now everyone can see that, wow, there's a whole bunch of people taking this course, and here's what they think about something. At the end, there's a whole bunch of people trying to apply the concept for this course, and I can comment on one of them, and they can comment on mine. And while it's not perfect, it gives a higher level of feelings of being connected to a community of learners, which is really something which we are trying so hard to create, and we think that it can be done. So far, if you click on that link, you can see some students that have already gone there and done it. Not everybody has followed the instructions to comment on their friend, but I think it's a good start to train students to say, look, right, actually, when you critique, give feedback to your friend, actually, you are learning a lot more than by doing the assignment yourself. Because when I have to look at my friend's work and give him feedback, actually, I become the teacher in a way. And while I may not be perfect at answering that, doing the assignment properly, when I am asked to give feedback to you and I do it properly, I learn a lot more, and I learn about how to evaluate the work. And guess what? If I can do that, my mastery will come eventually. It's not going to happen in one day, which never happens anyway. But that pathway, that journey towards mastery will come a lot faster if if I follow the instructions to critique my friend's work according to the guide that we provide, for example.
Yeah, that's so true. So true. So we have a couple of questions. If you
Okay,
see
what
from
pedagogy
Sandy.
framework
Mhm.
we can adopt?
Mhm.
Okay, I mean, we've for example, you use the Gane 9 events. If you look at it, it first starts with, oh, you must capture attention, etc., right? All the way to the end where you're looking at reflections. And by the way, in the e-learning, you'll find at the end, you ask everyone to do a reflection because the reflection is really important. And we even tell them, if you can spare the time, please just, give a like to your friend or comment on his or her reflection to another participant. So the Gane 9 events is kind of an okay pedagogy to start with. But again, there is no pedagogy out there that was specifically designed with e-learning in mind, right?
Mhm.
So you can talk about the 5 E's, the Gane and other things, but none of them were designed for asynchronous e-learning with no one kind of supervising. So if you you want to look at a Gane or a 5E and adapt it, not so much adopt it. And when you adapt it, you have to now look at like the way we did. For example, if I wanted to capture attention and okay, and the other thing, sorry, that we did put in is that when I told you about the self-determination theory, we decided from the start that that would have to be one of the key things that will be part of any framework that we were trying to create on our own, which means that, okay, while I have 5 E's and Gane's 9 events, all the way from, grabbing attention to reflection at the end, they would definitely need to feel competent, right? So if you look at the SDT frame, the self-determination theory framework, we're looking at 3 things, right? And this is has been proven many times that if you have these 3 things in place, people will be motivated to continue the learning. One of them is autonomy. So they must have a certain degree of choice. So to your question on the next button, at any one point in time, are people given a choice? Right? Next button means I got no choice. I have to press next. Now, this is highly difficult in e-learning. Now, if you go through iSpring, there's many branching, but in order to create branching, like if I want an easier path, I click this path, and then you brings me on an easier learning path, maybe with more scaffolding and support. If I click this, because I'm advanced, it will bring me on a shorter route. Now you can do that, and we teach our staff how to do that, but that is highly time consuming to create multiple pathways for every e-learning. My goodness, right? The amount of time you need to spend to create a novice path plus a expert path. And then you're kind of always wondering, right? So the way in which we have tried to do autonomy is to link it with this concept of connectedness, which is the second thing about a motivation theory. So people must feel connected. Now, so when we put in the Mentimeters and the Padlets and the reflections, right? We don't force you to do it because we can't at this point anyway. But you say, okay, so please pick one of the concepts and apply it. For example, we could do that, or we could. So we try to give some level of choice, of control over their learning environment. You can put a 1-liner application, you can put a 5-line application, you can we encourage you to give feedback, but you don't really have to give feedback. We just encourage it. So that kind of, we hope, gives a level of autonomy, so people feel as though, okay, this might be e-learning, but I certainly can have some level of control over what I do. Okay. The last point I've covered connectedness and autonomy. The last point would be really competence. At the end of the e-learning, participants must know beyond a shadow of doubt that they have become better at doing something. Okay, and that is the magic in the quizzes and the exercises and the stuff that you put into the e-learning to make sure people do repetition without repetition, if you know what I mean. It's kind of, you give them many variations of something, and you're showing it, hey, oh, when I change something, when I turn it from text to graphics and I put a different scenario, you're still able to get the quiz right, for example. And when they're able to feel that level of competence, they feel good and they feel like they want to continue. So that's an art in itself, right? How do you start with something easy, then progressively make it more and more difficult until a point whereby, wow, they realize that they have learned something, and again, the quizzes and the drag and drops and the what have you can really help to create that level of feeling. Right? They might not really be competent to a mastery level, but the feeling of competence is really the most important. So in any e-learning, 5E, 9 events, whatever, if you can make people feel again connected, okay, which is highly difficult in e-learning, if you can make them feel as though they have learned something, which is possible in the e-learning, actually, guess what? In e-learning, the competence part is even better than face-to-face, because in the competence part, in e-learning, when everyone does some level of quiz or drag and drop or whatever, I can actually see whether they have gotten 80% or whatever. Now, they might have tried it until they got it right, but at least there is a very quick measure. I can do a very quick diagnosis or a dashboard or whatever I want to export it to Excel and create a pie chart. I can know whether, at least at a baseline fundamental level, whether everyone has actually learned something, right? It might not be very significant in terms of high level learning, but I can definitely gauge competence in fundamental knowledge. And the last one being, again, the autonomy part, right? How do I make sure that I at least give students some choice, some control over the learning environment? That's critical, right?
Yeah, that's quite a challenge that you have to overcome every day.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, we have like a comment.
The end of any course developed using iSpring is able to reach the knowledge areas not until competence level. Competence included knowledge, skill, attitude classes. Yes, absolutely agree. We can do knowledge, skill, and attitude. Something that it's not easy to do within the e-learning. It's not impossible. For example, if I do a course on an e-learning course on how to write learning outcomes, which is highly difficult to teach other teachers, right? I can go through the principles behind how do you write good learning outcomes. At the end of the day, because the skill is very written, cognitive, I can make them do things I can make them go through quizzes, I can make them go through exercises, I can make them post actual learning outcomes and give feedback to one another. So in that case, I can actually get a little bit into the ascertaining of whether the skill has been attained or not, right? Yeah, so again, knowledge is possible, skill in certain cases is possible. Now, if it's a practical skill, agree, you can't do that, right? So if I'm teaching a student how to play basketball, a practical course that we do have, right? Then it will be highly difficult for me to use e-learning. But if I say, look, I need to do a very good session plan, a training plan, I could actually use e-learning to good effect, right? And we've done this in a fantastic way, I think, again, during the lockdown where we couldn't actually do practical classes. So I give you a quick example of, I wouldn't say, it is kind of e-learning. It wasn't really using iSpring, but now we've actually included some of those things that we learned into the iSpring format. And what we did was that, look, I'm teaching coaches, right? Sport coaches. They can't actually, my colleagues actually can't go out there and get people into a sport arena and get a student to coach their friends, because we couldn't go back to physical school, correct? So what we did was that we said, okay, I want you to, in your own home, use anything. So to teach basketball, we had students crunch up a piece of paper and then show the action on video. So they're taking a video of themselves, showing the actual and explaining the hand actions for throwing a free throw with a piece of crumpled up paper. Or for the hockey people, it was using a broomstick, whatever, right? They couldn't get out of the house, so they did that. And they posted it on a Padlet. and their friend had to look at that video and now perform the skill because they had to learn from their friend, right? So their friend coach, they now took a video of themselves crunching their own paper and doing it in their home. And then the third video was then the coach looking at the second video and giving feedback, because all coaches need to know how to give feedback according to a very principles of giving feedback. How do you be very quick, short, etc., right? So they took the third video after looking at the second video, the coach. So we did all that, and it worked fantastically well, because in the past where we had everybody on site, sometimes the quieter people wouldn't want to coach, and we didn't have time to have everybody coach, right? But in this case, now everybody had to coach because it's one-on-one. So now we started to say now, how do I now input that into the whole e-learning structure, such that even when we can go back face-to-face, people will still be doing this level of online interactions at a skill level that was no longer at the knowledge level. So just to make the point that, again, it is possible to do e-learning development and get to the skill level, even in some practical skills. So yeah, so just to answer that question.
Right, so you have to be more creative.
We, like all of you, we didn't have a choice, and I'm sure everyone in this would have we have done many creative things that we never thought was possible before this whole thing happened.
True. That's true.
Operate the fire extinguisher and extinguish the small fire. The word operate is the action word for a skill class. Some e-learning use a simulator to extinguish fire using the mouse instead of a real portable fire extinguisher. Conclusion: skill class need to be on site. Okay, so you are right, Wiki. I've seen an e-learning done by another school where they actually have what we call virtual reality. So the students wear goggles, and they're actually learning safety procedures for extinguishing fires in the aircraft. And they actually they take the virtual fire extinguisher, and then they now. The only thing that scared people away from that example was that not any lecturer can do that. That required outsourcing, because it was a full virtual environment to create the e-learning for safety about, like, when I see a fire, what are the procedures to do to put out the fire, including the fire extinguisher and the other things that they do. So it was to operate the fire extinguisher, and when in the virtual thing, right, you had to know you had to point your mouse to the pin in order to pull the pin, and then you had to kind of point the hose to the bottom of the fire, which was the correct position, and then you had to press the mouse to press the fire extinguisher. Again, if you didn't have a choice, it was possible to get to a certain level of skill, because they still had to make certain decisions which were part of the learning. But again, you're right. I mean, the actual getting, but that said, even when they can go back face to face, I think this VR e-learning would be fantastic to get students just mentally, visually used to whatever they have to do to operate the fire extinguisher. And when they go down, guess what? That face-to-face lesson can be a lot faster, because you no longer needed to go through a lot of the theory and the skill cues behind what they needed to do and why and where to look for what and make decisions. They could actually shorten that lesson or make the lesson more meaningful in terms of having a lot more discussion, for example, right? So that's an excellent example. But again, we're discovering every day, right, that e-learning can so much complement site practical training, and either shorten the practical training or really complement it to make it more meaningful, because nobody wants to go down to the fire extinguisher place and then sit there for half an hour listening to the guy talk about theories of what you need to know, right? It's just boring. Let me play the thing, right? They just want to grab it and play with it, right? They don't want to hear about what do I do first, second, third, right? So the students always want to get their hands on the equipment. This allows us to make that happen a bit faster.
Yeah, I cannot agree more. So yeah, thank you so much. And we actually ran out of time.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you so much for today's session. Really excited to have you here. And guys, thank you for joining us as well. And I wish you a very good day today. Thank you. We'll talk to you later.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks everyone.
You. Bye.
Bye.